Greetings and salutations. This is Rick Koppel, coming from Denver for another episode of Not a Linux Guru Guy. Today we're going to be looking at which Linux distro should you use, or I use, or anybody use. And we're going to take a look at that right after the intro. Thank you. And we are going to take a look, as I said, at which Linux distro should you use, or I use, or anybody use, for that matter. It's based on an article I wrote back last year, which is my blog, Linux Tips blog, and I'll give a link to that in the description. But yeah, while you're down there checking out that description and stuff, leave a comment, give a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And because you don't want to miss an episode, I hope. Anyway, one reason why many haven't hopped on the Linux bandwagon yet, and out in their Windows world, one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons, is a big difference between every other OS and Linux. Because there's like all these distros out there, last count about 600 distros. A lot of them. Yeah. And it's confusing for newbies to come in to Linux and see all these distros and go, which one should I use? It's kind of like the car dealership. You know, when you go to a car dealership, they bring you in and they look at all, you don't just go try all the cars in the parking lot that you see. Usually they'll single out one or two or three cars that they want you to check out. Usually one, because it's one they want you to buy. And so yeah, that's part of the trick is when you have a Windows operating system or a Apple operating system and iOS, and you go and you just have a one operating system. There's no other distribution to look at. If you want Apple, you get Apple. If you want Windows, you get Windows. If you want Linux, you get all these different options. So there's this negative part of it. The positive part of it is there is a lot of options for you. And most times you can find the operating system you're looking for. You look short enough or long enough, hard enough. How do you go about looking for the right distro? You can't try all 600 of them. Probably would want to. But the best way that I found to do this is, one, to know what your needs are. That's the first thing. Two, to find out to start off with a good solid Linux distro that's a good transition to another one, or maybe you want to stick with that one as you use the transitional demo. So it's confusing, but it's not that confusing really when you think about it, because all the distros there's a Linux kernel, which is why it's called Linux, because it's the kernel, the core of the operating system. You have the Linux kernel, then you have the window manager that goes on it that allows you to have windows and stuff and manages those. Window manager, that's why it's called window manager. And you can just stop there and you have some base programs that are installed on the system to make it operate, as well as other programs installed on the system. And most of the distros have what's called a desktop environment, which is basically just programs and that are used to put all the backgrounds and all this kind of stuff, all the kind of things you have that way. Now you can take a core basic operating system like Arch or Debian or something like that, and you can build it however you want to. You can put whatever you want on it. And most distros are like that. You can switch out window managers, you switch out this, that, and the other thing within reason. Some have some certain restrictions, but by and large, you can do that. And you can actually put more than one desktop environment on most Windows systems. Linux systems, excuse me, don't want to confuse things. So you have all these systems out there, and there are all sorts of things. So one of the things you need to figure out is what you need, what kind of operating system you're looking for. So like, are you wanting something like that looks and operates like Windows? Well, there is a certain operating system out there that does that specific thing. You make it look like Windows 98 or XP or 7 or 8 or 10. You make it look like all those different versions of Windows if you want. But I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. The way I'd recommend going about it is first install Linux Mint. Why do I say Linux Mint? Now, a lot of people look at it as beginner's distros, I mentioned in an earlier video. But also, Linux Mint is just, it's a good system to work with, start out with. Because it's intuitive, it operates a lot like Windows. Doesn't look exactly like Windows like the other system Linux does, but it's a good system, and it allows you to get your feet wet in the Linux world. You can gradually start learning some of the commands and terminals and stuff like that, and you can work with it. And when it works, you can do everything graphically pretty much if you need to. It needs to be done on Windows, most Windows people. You can even set up your Samba manually if you want to, and graphically, without having to go to the command line. I think I want to try this old distro over here I heard about. So you go check it out, and you put it on a separate computer. You want to put it on your main driver computer, your daily driver computer, whether it's Windows. You're trying out your first Linux distro like Linux Mint or something else, and you don't want to look at another distro without putting it on a VirtualBox or ideally on another laptop or computer that you have available. It's kind of like a backup laptop that you don't have to save all your files in and stuff like that. Really don't want to just go, I think I like this distro, and stick it on your one and only computer and erase all your files and everything, even if you have backups, because you don't know whether the system's going to work with all the hardware you got. It's like the Peppermint episode I had last time, where I took Peppermint and I thought, well, this should work, and I put it on the live USB, and it booted up fine. It worked fine there. And I tried to install it, and remember what happened? It wouldn't install grub for some reason. I couldn't get install grub no matter how many times, how many ways I tried different things and tricks I tried. Couldn't get it to install grub. I don't know about the SSD drive that I have on here, solid state drive, or some other bug or a little quirk in the system or something. It's all fine on my Aspire laptop I had, my backup, but it wouldn't install here, so I had to refine, figure out what I was going to do. Ended up installing Linux Mint Debian Edition, and that's what I'm using right now to record this video and everything else. It's my daily driver now. But yeah, you don't want to do that on your main driver, especially in the middle of projects and stuff like that. Not good. So yeah, I'd warn against doing that, and get you a old backup laptop that you have lying around or something like that. Or if you don't have that, at least get it installed on VirtualBox first and see if it works on that or not and if you like it before you install it. Oh yeah, but you have to figure out what you want, what your needs are, because a lot of these are out of the box working. Most people just install some out of the box. They don't tinker around with a whole lot. and whatever it has on it. They may install a program or two or three or four, and then that's all they do with it. They don't play with the window manager. They don't change out the Linux kernel. They don't go in and change out desktop, add desktops or whatever. They just use what they get with the distro. That's why they have so many distros out there, because all of them meet certain specific needs. Like Ubuntu Studio, for instance. That distro is kind of a creative person's distro. It's got duplicate programs, even stuff you probably don't need all those programs they have on there. But anyway, if I put that on my system, I have to install half the programs on there because I wouldn't need them. But they put all these programs on there that are designed for people who are creative artists, writers, and YouTube creators, and all that kind of stuff. So it has all the programs on it that you need for that kind of thing. More than enough, actually. So yeah, so you got all those, and then you have systems like say you have your laptop, or you're running on a low memory system or something. Probably want something like Ubuntu or Ubuntu, one of those two. Or there's other low. Peppermint is a low memory and resource light system. So you need that. That's what you would get. Or let's say you just want something that works. I'd stick with Linux Mint then in that case. No problem, huh? So yeah, that's what I'd recommend you do. Figure out what your needs are, what kind of programs you need. Install Linux Mint. Once you get feet wet with that and you really want to move on from that, then you can start looking at the distros. Until then, I wouldn't recommend doing much of anything else other than just installing Linux Mint. The reason I say that is because Linux Mint is easy to install, it's not hard, and it works generally out of the box. It's got all the stuff under the box. You can use your graphical, you can just work like Windows works pretty much. Maybe a small exception here or there, but yeah, it's a solid system and it works real well. And I would also just stick with Cinnamon Desktop until you're ready to move on to other desktops too, because that's most Windows-like desktop out there. And when I say Windows-like, I don't mean it looks like Windows. Don't load it all expecting to see Windows desktop. But if you look at it from the perspective of how it operates, under the hood, it's a lot like Windows, and then it processes menu items and all the programs and stuff a lot like Windows does. So it's very familiar and intuitive for anybody coming from Windows environment. Then once you get a few wet, you learn all the other distros are out there and try some other ones. One you don't want to start with, let me just tell you what you don't want to do. You want to go, I like that Arch idea. I'm going to install that right now, because Arch install is not easy. It's command line install. It's all command line, unless you're familiar with command line and the Linux command line environment. I would not recommend starting with that one. This is a newbie to Linux. So, wouldn't start there. Now, if you want an Arch system, you can install Manjaro or Elementary OS. Not Elementary OS, anyway. The other one. Can't think of it off the top of my head, but anyway, Manjaro is a common one that's installed. It has an easy install, rolling release based on Arch. There's one I'm going to review pretty soon that's another Urundu Linux, which is also based on Arch, and it's easy install as well. Check it out, and may all your computers run Linux eventually. Bye.